Ethan sat in his car, staring at the office tower in front of him. The glass windows reflected the early morning sun, but to him, they looked like mirrors, forcing him to confront his own tired face. Every morning was the same: coffee in one hand, laptop bag in the other, and a pit in his stomach that only grew deeper as he stepped into that building. He had done everything people told him to do. He had chosen the safe career, followed the advice of teachers, parents, mentors, and friends. He had ticked every box: stable job, decent salary, good apartment, even a car that impressed people who barely knew him. But inside, he felt empty. "Why do I feel like I'm living someone else's life?" he whispered to himself, gripping the steering wheel. Ethan wasn't lazy. He worked hard, often late into the night. But every project he completed felt like it belonged to someone else's dream. He wanted to create, to inspire, to connect with people. Instead, he spent his days writing reports no one cared about, selling ideas he didn't believe in, chasing promotions that meant nothing to him. One rainy afternoon, after another meaningless meeting, Ethan wandered into a quiet bookstore he had never noticed before. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, maybe just an escape. As he browsed through the aisles, he noticed an older man sitting near the back, scribbling into a worn notebook. Something about the man's calm presence caught Ethan's attention. "You look lost," the man said without looking up. Ethan laughed awkwardly. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who's been lost before," the man replied, finally meeting Ethan's eyes. "Tell me, whose dream are you chasing?" The question hit Ethan like a lightning bolt. He tried to answer, but the words tangled in his throat. The man closed his notebook and leaned forward. "You know, the greatest tragedy isn't failing at your dream, it's succeeding at someone else's." Those words lingered in Ethan's mind long after he left the bookstore. That night, lying in bed, he thought about the guitar hidden in his closet, the one he hadn't touched in years. Music had always been his passion, his outlet, his way of connecting with people, but somewhere along the way, he had buried it under deadlines and expectations. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan couldn't shake the man's words. Slowly, quietly, he began to play again. At first, it was just for himself, late at night, when the world was asleep. Then, one evening, he recorded a simple song and uploaded it online. He didn't expect much, maybe a handful of views, a polite comment or two. But within days, his inbox flooded with messages from strangers around the world. "Your song got me through a rough day. I felt like you were telling my story. I haven't cried in years, but your music touched something deep in me." Ethan was stunned. The reports he wrote at work were forgotten within hours, but his music, his true voice, was touching lives in ways he never imagined. One night, after posting another song, he received a message from a young woman in Canada. Her brother had been battling depression, and she played Ethan's song for him. She wrote, "For the first time in months, I saw him smile. You reminded him that he's not alone. Thank you." Ethan sat staring at the screen, tears blurring his vision. He realized that what he thought was just a small act sharing his music had the power to ripple into someone else's world and bring light where there was only darkness. But choosing his dream wasn't easy. His parents questioned his decisions. His colleagues laughed when he quit his job. Friends warned him he was making a mistake. Doubt followed him everywhere. There were nights he lay awake, wondering if he should have stayed in his safe life. Then came the twist. Months later, Ethan was invited to perform at a community event. Nervous but determined, he walked onto the stage with nothing but his guitar. As he sang, he looked out at the faces in the crowd, people swaying, smiling, some with tears streaming down their cheeks. He realized in that moment that even if he never filled stadiums, even if he never became famous, he was exactly where he needed to be. He was living his dream. After the performance, a man approached him with his teenage daughter. She wore a headscarf and clutched Ethan's hand tightly. Her father explained that she had been battling cancer, and during her treatments, she listened to Ethan's songs. "Your music gave her hope when medicine couldn't," he said. The girl looked up at Ethan, her eyes shining despite the exhaustion on her face. "Please don't stop singing," she whispered. Ethan felt something shift deep inside him. All the doubts, all the fears, All the voices telling him to be realistic suddenly fell silent. He realized that living for others' approval was a prison, but living for his own truth was freedom. Years later, Ethan wasn't a household name. He didn't have millions in the bank, but he had something better. A life filled with purpose, connection, and authenticity. His songs continued to travel farther than he ever could, reaching people in places he'd never been, reminding them to hold on, to believe, to dare to be different. Looking back, Ethan often thought of the man in the bookstore. One simple question had changed the course of his entire life. Whose dream are you chasing? Today, Ethan asks the same question to anyone who will listen. And maybe, just maybe, someone hearing his story will have the courage to stop running after others' dreams and start living their own. Because in the end, the world doesn't need another copy. It needs the original version of you.